Welcome to The B Word, a women's lifestyle podcast. I'm your host, Katie Ploss. I'm a school psychologist, women's wellness coach, a doula, and the founder of BU, a women's wellness community. I created The B Word to share my stories, knowledge, and training to help you navigate the everyday challenges of being a woman. We discuss everything from navigating dating and relationships, parenting, building a career, to just finding what you're passionate about and figure out who you are meant to be. At the B Word, we aim to destigmatize mental health challenges, grow, heal, and empower you to be your most authentic self. Let's dive into today's episode. I am so excited to have Lisa McGrath here on the podcast today. Lisa is an opportunity mindset coach with years of experience cultivating relationships and guiding people through their personal growth to reach new levels of satisfaction in their work and relationships. Lisa is most excited to help others shift their perspectives and push past their current limitations to confidently arrive at living their definition of professional and personal success. Lisa is the founder of Kavea Studio and the creator of the You Uninterrupted coaching program, where she helps you find opportunities for greatness. We're going to have Lisa here today, who's going to tell her story of how she got into this work and what it means to be a woman, an entrepreneur, a mom, and all of the things. So hi, Lisa. Thanks for joining me today.
Hello. I am so excited to be here with you, Katie.
I'm so excited to have you. So tell us your story. How did you get into being a mindset coach?
It actually happened when I had my first son and I was leaving a fast-paced video game business where I was in charge of sales and the sales teams. And the idea of leaving my son at home, my brand new baby at home, to go sell video games and knowing what the back end of that looks like and the ramifications just didn't align with who I was now as a mom. Everything shifts when you become a mom. I think you talk to any mother and they'll tell you that there is this huge shift inside of you
Mhm.
that just levels up life around you in a way that you could never imagine. Even though you've seen other people around you go through it, when you go through it yourself, everything, all of your values, all of your priorities, they
Mhm.
shift and they mean something so much deeper.
Yeah. So before you were a mom, what was your plan?
Yeah, I don't know that I had a plan per se. I think I assumed I would be married
Mhm.
and I assumed I would have children, but
Mhm.
the plan was really to make as much money as I could in sales, to be honest, because there was a certain level of comfort in my lifestyle that I was looking for.
Mhm.
And if I was going to get married, it was going to be to somebody who could match my energy, not financially, match my energy as a person who was ready to take on new adventures. In sales, I'm usually one of the only women in the room. It's very much a man's world. I don't know what it's like now. I left that world 17 years ago, and but I can't imagine that much has changed in that way. And I was pretty tough for keeping up in the room and having my voice heard when the room was mostly men. And yeah, I didn't know how long I would be able to hold on to that. But at the back of my mind, somewhere deep down that I wasn't listening to, was this more compassionate side of me, this
Mhm.
side that wanted more connection, wanted something deeper and more meaningful.
Mhm.
And yeah, it just happened when I had my first child, when that voice, I couldn't quiet anymore. I had to.
There's nothing like motherhood to make a woman lean into the softness of femininity. It's the most feminine thing you can do is have a baby, right?
Yeah.
And sales, when you're in that world, it's a very masculine. And I don't even necessarily think it's like man or woman, but it is this masculine or feminine energy that is dominated in different various professions. And so for sales, it's so masculine. It's a hustle. You're on the hunt. You're on the hunt for sales, for making money, for landing clients. And it's a fast-paced, moving entity that you don't really get to lean in and slow down. There are sacrifices and compromises that you make when you choose any career. But I think there's a different type of pressure when you're a woman and then you become a mom to be able to balance both of those things. So what was that like for you, balancing both of those worlds?
Yeah, you're 100% right. It is huge masculine energy. There's a lot of doing.
Mm-hmm.
and not a lot of receiving except for the check at the end of the day. But what you
Right.
had to do to get that check is something that, you may or may not be proud of.
Right.
And my secret sauce in sales was that I was a woman and that there was softness that I could lean into. There were
Mm-hmm.
things I could get away with in a conversation that the other men couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
And that usually opened doors for me and had people pay attention to me when I did speak. So
Mm-hmm.
I really understood my power in that way, and that was really beautiful. Becoming a mom meant that I would have to be traveling a lot. I'd have to leave him a lot. And I wasn't prepared to do that. And I wasn't prepared to do it for something I didn't believe in.
Mm-hmm.
So as soon as I had my son, I left the job and started consulting. That way I could reach out and find business owners who had big hearts and who wanted to have beautiful conversations while growing their business. And I could be helpful in that way in business development and sales. And so that balance was what kept me feeling proud of what I could do as a mom, as
Mm-hmm.
well as feeling proud of how I earned that check. The truth is, my husband has had a great check coming in.
Mm-hmm.
And so, me having to work, I was very privileged that I didn't have to. Like, we had food on the table, roof over our heads, that sort of thing, but it was a part of me that needed to. I had so much value to offer that I just had to find a vehicle to do that that allowed me to still put him down for naps. My son, put him down for naps and
Yeah.
when take him to the park. And so there were times when I could lean into that. I also learned to paint during that time. So it was a
Awesome.
beautiful time of finding balance in my life to
Yeah.
see what it is that I wanted to lean into and take that time for myself and not feel rushed to accommodate someone else's opinion of what I should be able to do with my
Yeah.
time and myself.
Yeah. And like you said, too, when you become a mom, it just changes everything. It changes your perspective. It changes the way you see yourself, the way you see the world. And when you're having to balance or be in a position or a job or a role that really doesn't at all support that huge change in your life, it's really difficult to maintain that. But also, and I think where you sounds like you hit your stride was that you were in a job where you could still hold on to those pieces of you that not necessarily you were before you were a mom, but that are outside of who you are as a mom. Because I think on the other side, women also that don't have a job or they don't have another hobby or friendships or whatever, they just get lost in that one piece of who they are. And being a mom is a huge piece of who you are if you have children, but I think a lot of women get depressed and they feel really isolated in that too. And so it is this precious balancing act, juggling act that we have to do when we have children. And so
Yeah.
I think it's really nice to hear about somebody that was able to do it. I think a lot of women, especially women I know that have kids under 2, you're like very much in the thick of it. And to hear stories or to hear people's experiences where it's possible to maintain a sense of self and be a mom, I think is really important.
Yeah, I 100%. I know quite a few women in my personal friend circle who are going through very depressed times.
Mhm.
And we had our kids a long time ago. Our kids are now teenagers.
Mhm.
But because they never leaned into anything outside motherhood,
Mhm.
once the kids no longer needed them to change the diapers and to be fed, there was no that huge need, and the kids were off to school doing their own thing. They had nothing else to do. There was no way to express other parts of them, and they felt like they'd lost touch with those other parts of them. And
Mhm.
therefore, are those parts even still valid? Are they still valued? What do
Mhm.
I do with that? I'm starting from scratch. I've been out of the game so long, but
Mhm.
not realizing that the game is what you decide it's going to be
Mhm.
and that you don't have to go back to being the person you were pre-children. You
Right.
can do a nice deep dive into yourself and find what it is that's filling you now. Because
Yeah.
after all those years, so much has changed within you. You've evolved without realizing it. And it's time to pause and look at that and see,
Mhm.
okay, I still have loads of value. How can I participate and what would fill me to do so?
And I think the truth is you become a better mom when you do that work. Especially now, like you said, you have teenagers and the main task of the developing teenage brain is to figure out who they are and how they fit in the world. And so if you're a mom that doesn't know how you fit in your family, how you fit within yourself, it's going to be really hard to facilitate the development of your teenage young adult children who are trying to figure out where they fit. in this big, grand, complex, scary world. And so I think that's also important too. If you're a mom and you're like, I don't know who I am, but I don't really want to engage in this work. If you don't do it for you, you do it in the pursuit of being a better mom. I really believe that. I think we're better parents when we know who we are.
Yeah, 100% true. I also see now that not the same friends who are depressed, but the ones who are struggling with their teens, it's because they are pouring so much of themselves into controlling the teen's life
Mm,
because they don't have other distractions that are healthy for them to dig into. And so they pour everything in, and what they're doing is they're suffocating their kids.
mm-hmm,
So my relationship with my boys, I've got two boys, it was an earned level of trust
mm,
because I've scaffolded them through certain struggles, but I've always maintained a really open conversation with them. And I've let them see me struggle. And when I've got a horrible story in my head about where they've been and who they're hanging out with, I tell them the story that's in my head. And I said, look, I don't need to control the situation. I just need you to be a little bit empathetic about what I'm going through when I don't understand what's going on with you.
mm-hmm,
And so it's been an earned relationship, I would say, with my children. It's not something that I just expect from them.
mm-hmm.
It's something that I feel that I've had to work for. And I'm seeing the beauty of that now. Not to say that everything's peaches and roses. We still
Right.
have
Of
butting
course.
heads. They're teenagers. They're going through their sour stage, especially the little one right now.
Mm-hmm,
But still, there is this beautiful thread that holds us together that has love and respect wrapped around it tightly.
mm-hmm.
And I lean so deep into that with them. And you're right, if you don't know yourself enough to be able to articulate things back to your children, they don't understand. They're so confused. The frontal cortex isn't
Mm-hmm,
developed and they're going through
mm-hmm.
all the hormonal changes and they can't carry the weight of you as well. And that's too much to ask.
Yes. I watched a documentary recently about teenagers. It was on Netflix, I think. And the psychologists that were doing it had said that a lot of times in society we treat teenagers like mini adults. Like we judge them and dismiss them and minimize their needs and their development because we're like, you should know this by now. You should have these things figured out. When the truth is that they really don't, and nor should they be expected to. And also, I think we project even more of our stuff onto our kids as they get older
Oh my
because
gosh,
they've
yeah.
got, especially if you haven't done this identity work and you haven't figured out who you are and where you fit as a mom or a dad. A struggling child is a symptom of an issue within the family system. And so when parents just throw kids in therapy or they dismiss their teenager or whatever, they're really dismissing the symptom within the whole system. It's a collective issue. It's a collective challenge to overcome together. And I think I like what you said about how you're all threaded together through this mutual respect and the bonds and the connections that you have grown over their lifetime. But I think a lot of people don't see it that way. And then on top of it, when you're balancing, like trying to figure out what you're passionate about, what your career is going to be, and you're just trying to get through the damn day, it's like really hard to have some of these really high level mindset work type of thoughts. So, how did you get into this work? From you were working in sales, then you went into consulting, and you did that for quite a while. What was the next shift and what motivated the next shift for you?
Yeah. Yeah. So after consulting, I actually launched my own business to help people launch their business.
Mm-hmm.
And during that, you if you own a business already, that you wear 17 different hats
Mm-hmm.
to run it. And so people have a great idea. They want to get into the entrepreneur world, not realizing what it actually takes to do that, to be that person. And it's a shift of the person themselves to be able to pull off a business. And so, as much as there was strategy, there was a ton of supporting the clients with mindset work, with becoming an entrepreneur, actually embodying this new version of themselves. And because of my work for myself and for my family, it was really important that when we worked with clients, that they understood that they weren't just designing the business, they were designing a very important part of their life that was going to touch the other parts of their life. And
Mm-hmm.
so they had to holistically come and look at this whole thing so that they could find their own version of balance. What does that really mean? Where is the impact for your spouse? Where is the impact for your children? Where is the impact for your wallet? How can you level up? And so when COVID hit and things slowed down, I realized that was more the conversation I wanted to have,
Mm-hmm.
less about the strategy of the business and more about the strategy of how it is you're going to design your life to support you. And where could you lean into the things, the resources you already have around you? How could you be more honest about what it is that you need? All these sorts of things that people don't often think about. You run into strategy mode and let's just fix it and let's just do
Mm-hmm.
this, but you don't take the time to get quiet to find out what do you actually need.
Mm-hmm.
And once you figure that out, well then even from that, what do you actually want? And so the need is just, it's again, it's the roof over your head and food on the table. What do you want though? Like when you get up, what do you want your life to be? And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people cannot answer that question when I ask them. And
Yeah.
that is telling of where we are. We're so scattered and we're so busy serving everybody else but ourselves that
Yeah.
it's a problem. And I'm sure you have seen this time and time again.
And especially, I think COVID, you're in a lot, COVID changed that a lot for people. Was there a light bulb moment for you, whether it was during COVID or after that, that really solidified this process or got the wheels turning in that you were going to make these types of shifts in your own life and with the clients that you were working with?
Yeah, for sure. There was this one meditation I did, and I don't remember which one it was exactly. And I came out of it and I was sobbing
Mm,
because my husband and I, through COVID, everything's tense. And
yeah.
of course, I'm not dealing with it well, and I'm putting it on him. And
Hmm.
I come out of this meditation and I realize I'm the damn problem,
Mm,
that I'm not dealing with what I'm going through, and I'm being really mean.
hmm.
And I came out, and at the time that I came out of the meditation, he came downstairs and I just looked at him and I just said, I'm so sorry.
Mm,
And I owned everything I needed to.
hmm.
And that gave me wings
Hmm.
to expand, wings to be free,
Hmm.
and wings to be able to realize I have the power to free myself from whatever is keeping me trapped, which
Hmm.
means it's all in my head
Right.
and it's all in my heart. And if I can figure this out, then it's worth going deeper. And so I did. I expanded my research, I expanded my knowledge, I expanded taking ownership of things. And then I realized that there are a lot of people around me who are stuck in this cycle and
Mm,
thinking that it's something outside of them, where
mm,
they put the blame temporarily makes them feel good, but long term is not the answer. And that's when I decided, yeah, this is the work. This is what I want
yeah.
to talk about.
Yeah. And ownership and accountability, responsibility, integrity. Those are like my favorite
Yes, me too.
words, things to work through because they're so powerful. And I think so many people are afraid of taking ownership, of peeking under the hood of their brain and seeing where they are contributing to their own suffering and their own pain. Because, and I think really it comes down to if I see that, what does it mean about me?
Yes.
And if these things are true about me, what does that mean about my value and my worth? What does that mean about my relationships? What does that mean? Am I lovable? Am I deserving? It asks all these really deep questions that can sometimes really poke at some really deep old wounds that haven't been opened or looked at since you were a child. And mindset work, and what I like about mindset work versus, and I've done both. I've done tons of therapy, I've done tons of coaching. But what I like about it is with coaching and mindset is that yes, the things that happened to you in your past or the things that kind of contributed to this fear of wanting to look at yourself or not wanting to be seen is important to have some general awareness, but to focus on what now. I know that this is true about me, but what now? How can I create change in my life moving forward? I think is so powerful because half the battle is becoming aware. But once you become aware, and that's where sometimes I felt that I like hit a dead end in therapy was like, okay, what do I do with this awareness, this like new level of consciousness now? And that is the beauty of mindset work is that you start to do something with it, something tangible. And I had similar types of realizations during COVID, I think, because we just had no more distractions. We couldn't keep spinning on the hamster wheel that we were all living in. It's funny. I was just thinking the other day, like, I think a lot of people are getting back on the sad hamster wheel like 4 years later.
Yeah.
But for those that have these huge awakenings during COVID. You're just never the same.
Ever. Never. And it was a forced pause.
Yeah.
And if you were lucky enough, you took the time
Mm-hmm.
to do something with that pause, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to just planning for how quickly could you get up and running back on that wheel again.
Mm-hmm. What was
Yeah.
your relationship with meditation before, like, and just like slowing down and getting connected before you had these realizations?
Yeah, I'd been meditating for quite some time. Yeah, and journaling. It was
Mm-hmm.
definitely part of my routine, waking up early and getting into this stuff, because that time getting up early when the house is quiet and no one's around and no one needs me
Mm-hmm.
was the only time I could find, because I go to bed early. I'm not great at staying up late and having that time to myself.
Yeah.
So getting up early and having that time to myself was where it was for me, and it was cherished. And at first when I started meditating, I didn't understand, oh, because I was on the hamster wheel. I was like, what's supposed to happen? Where are
Yeah.
the answers? I was so confused. I didn't get it. Journaling, I understood. Meditation, I couldn't wrap my head around it, but something just said, just keep going. Just keep
Mm-hmm.
showing up, just keep going. And eventually the benefits came, the rewards came, the settling down, the realization. The truth is what came, actually. The truth
Yes.
is what came to me. And it can't come from the outside. You've just got to go still. It's already inside of you, as you well know. But the only time to do that is in meditation. When else do you have perfect, quiet, peaceful time where it's just you and you? And
Especially when you're a
so,
mom,
gosh,
all the demands of everything. But I
yeah,
think too, in our society, we're so driven by these external reinforcers. Like, we're so driven by the job is going to give us the answer, the relationships are going to give us the answer, the check boxes that we've all got in our mind of the boxes we need to check. I'm doing this, I'm doing that, should give me this level of awareness, satisfaction, happiness, joy, whatever it is. And it really is not until you get really quiet and look inward that you start to find the real satisfaction it's always been right inside you. You don't have to achieve X, Y, and Z. You don't have to check these things off the to-do list. You don't have to be this type of parent. You don't have to have these type of kids, this type of husband. You know what I mean? I think people just get
100%.
so fixated on this external thing is what is going to make me happy. You'll just be on this hamster wheel of achieving this, achieving that, and going on to the next thing and the next thing. And you're like, why am I not still feeling right? Why do I feel disconnected?
Yeah, that we don't know our level of enough.
Yeah.
So we're born worthy, and yet from birth, we start having to hit these markers. You should be walking by now. You should be talking by now as a baby, right?
Mhm.
Then it's like you should be getting straight A's. You should be off to college. You should be off to university. There's all these things, and who is giving us all these directives? It's all from outside of us. It's
Yeah.
not ourselves telling us what we need. We've never taught to listen to what we need. And
Right.
unfortunately, there are some people who know what they need, but they aren't supported by the family dynamic, or
Mhm.
they aren't supported by the community dynamic, and they're being told something that goes against what they know inside, and so they suffer until there's the opportunity to break free of that. But this idea of knowing what is your enough is something that's not explored and needs to be, because yeah, you can, to your point, you can get the bigger paycheck, you can get the next promotion, you can get the bigger house, you can get the fancier car, whatever it is, but to what end? When
Mhm.
is it enough? And
Right.
if every time you acquire something outside of yourself and still feel empty inside of yourself, at some point you've got to clue in. It isn't the stuff. It isn't these fancy experiences that you get to brag about.
Right.
It's the internal stuff that you're not, that's the deep work you aren't doing. And that's why you haven't been able to reach these levels of joy and freedom and peace of mind that you see, that seem some other people seem to have. But
Mhm.
also, they didn't do it alone.
Mhm.
They had
Right.
somebody to guide them, right? So even when I was doing this work on myself, I wasn't alone. I either had a coach or I was following a particular guru. You use the word guru lightly here,
Loosely, yes.
but somebody who knew
A
something
healer.
about something. Yes, a healer. Thank you. That's a much better word. Knew something that I didn't know, that I was desperate to learn, because I
Yeah.
was desperate only because I
Right.
wanted out of the chains of everything that was around me, that was pulling on me, that was telling me who I had to be.
Right.
Instead of, I wanted to be free of that so that I could look inside and figure out who I needed to be for me to be happy.
And so when you had this realization during COVID, what happened after that? Like, how did things start to shift for you?
I got deep into the research
Yeah.
of mindset work. I got deep into everything that I could find. My kids were going through anxiety. I dug into the research for anxiety. How could I support them during COVID? It's so interesting because pre-COVID, my business of helping businesses, I worked with a lot of psychotherapists who were having a hard time filling their calendars with clients. COVID hit, everybody paused, realized they're not dealing well. All of a sudden, all these therapists now have waiting lists. Finding an appropriate therapist to support my family was not an option, not for not lack of trying, but there
It's
just
so
is,
true.
right?
Yeah, it's so
Yeah.
bad.
And so I had to do the work myself. And so here was my moment to go
Mm,
and do something that I'm truly interested in, that
yeah.
I could see it would help me, would help my family, and then to come out the other side to go, maybe I can help other people as well. I have great respect for therapy. As I said, I've worked with therapists. And again, you said earlier, there's a time though when therapy ends and the coaching begins.
Mm-hmm.
And you're just ready to move forward from here.
Mm-hmm.
That for me is the joyful part of it.
Mm-hmm.
That's when you realized what's going on with yourself. You looked in there and you're like, but I want something different.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to see it a different way. And I want a new perspective. And I want to believe in new concepts. And
Mm-hmm.
that then means you're in motion, you're in action, and you're moving forward. And that for me, you can see in my face, I get super excited about that piece.
There's this balance of, avoiding who you are and avoiding kind of like we're talking about. A lot of people don't want to look under the hood, right? Like there
Right.
there is this sense of fear and unease and discomfort with doing that. The fact of it is that we do have to have some level of discomfort to move into a new sense of self and a new mindset. Because if we're not uncomfortable, what is the point? Like our brains are really simplistic in that way, and that typically we're running away from pain or we're running toward pleasure. So if there is no discomfort and you're feeling very hunky dory, there's going to be your brain isn't going to shift. Your brain isn't going to make those changes to move
That's
forward
right.
and to have that take that action. I love the balance of, yeah, I see you. I see your wounds. I see your past. And that's the healing part of therapy is just to be seen. And then it's okay. We see her and this is who she still is. And this is who she still can be, even in spite of these wounds and this pain. You're still enough and you're still deserving. We also don't have to just live in our wounds forever either. And that's not the point of taking a look under the hood and it's not to dwell. It's not to over examine some of these things that have happened to us, but it's just to hold space for it. And you don't have to exist there for very long. I think people also are like, oh, I'm just going to exist there forever. And it's like, if your therapist is having you exist there forever, then that's like a nudge to see someone new, try a different approach because you can move on to the next phase of healing. And that really is taking actionable change in your mindset and your lifestyle and there's so many ways of doing that, whether it's therapy, coaching, meditation, journaling. Usually it's applying multiple of those approaches into one, right? It's not just doing one thing. It's not just showing up for a coaching call. It's not just sitting on the couch of a therapist's office. It's not just putting pen to paper. That's where you start a lot of the time. But I think too, a lot of people get caught up in, oh, I'm doing it. I'm checking the box. Why don't I feel better? And so what was that like for you of doing the work and seeing the change? Was it did it feel very fast? Did it feel like it took forever? What was it like during that process for you?
Yeah. It was like going to the gym where you didn't see the definition in your arms right away,
Yeah.
but that over time you were able to stand still and look back at
Mm,
yourself and go, oh, I remember her.
mhm,
I remember that version. And it
mhm,
just seems to happen quietly. And I think that's
mhm,
probably the best way for it to happen is for it to just happen quietly because you just quietly become this person. And it means that you don't need the fanfare. You
mhm,
don't need the accolades from other people. You don't need permission from anyone to move. Like it's supposed to be, I think, quiet. And I think it's supposed to just, it's at your own pace.
mhm.
And so it's just so beautiful and so natural and so easy. And I don't mean the work is easy, but the transformation, when you're consistent with it,
Mhm.
there's an ease to it. It just comes at your own time because the only person forcing you is you. So the only
Yeah.
person making you get up and do the meditation, making you make the call you didn't want to make, the one who's decided, who has chosen to heal a relationship that has just been so awful and there's no reason for it, and you can see a better way. Like that choice is only going to come from you. You have to make that choice. And so with this, there's this ease about tapping into yourself and allowing yourself to just go with your own level of flow, your own pace of action, your own pace of thought. And I think that's beautiful. And so I didn't necessarily see the changes as they were happening, but through showing up for myself and always catching myself when I have an angry moment and going, oh, there it is. Okay, no. All right. And then I'm in that moment, say, I'm sorry. That's just old stuff coming out because I need to go to the bathroom, or I need a Snickers bar, or I need the
Yeah,
water.
that lizard
Yeah.
brain, like I have a need that needs to be fulfilled. But I also was thinking as you were talking, when what you had mentioned with that we've always been guided by these external forces, like even as babies, like we have to meet
Yes.
these certain milestones. And I think what was the most healing part of coaching for me was a lot of the coaching sessions when I was going through all my stuff there was a ton of resistance. Like I was almost arguing with my coach and she was like, I can't deal with you. And we would laugh about it, but I had a lot of resistance and I was questioning a lot of things. I was questioning a lot of things about myself and I would question a lot of things during the process. And it was very, and I'm not the easiest client to work with. And my therapist, my coach could tell you that. I have a lot of resistance, and every time I would get to these sessions, my coach would give me permission. I don't have anything new to offer you from the last time that we talked about this and the time before we talked about this same thing. Nothing has changed except your mindset. So I'm offering you the same thing. When you want to come back and coach through this again, I'm going to offer you the same thing over and over again until your brain decides to do something different or to approach the situation differently. But I felt like for so many years that I was on a timeline that I had to do that by a certain point in time, or if I didn't click after one session or two sessions or three sessions, that there was something wrong with me or that I wasn't doing the work right. When really I didn't know that. At the time, it was really frustrating to go through that and feel like I was up hitting a wall, but really I was chiseling my resistance. And then once I turned around a year later and I'm like, oh my God, I am totally different. And I think too, that's where people they give up sometimes on this mindset work because it doesn't feel like it in the moment. It feels really uncomfortable. There feels like a lot of resistance. It feels like it's not working a lot of the
Yeah.
time. But once
100%.
you turn around, you're like, "Oh my God, I have made so much growth."
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And you need you it is that we're trying to appease the people around me. We've done the work, and I want to be able to brag to people around me that I've got this to show for it. And so, but there isn't an external tangible to show for it. That's
Mhm.
not what this work is about. The tangible is happening, it's happening on the inside, but
Mhm.
you have got to be okay with doing the work until the day you can stand and look back at yourself to see the evidence of it.
Mhm.
And so I remember when I was going through this work, someone who had known me for quite some time, an older version of Lisa,
Mhm.
said to my husband, have you seen a difference in her? And he looked at me, and it was so gradual that he had to think back to who I was at the time that I knew those people, when we first knew those people.
Mhm.
And then he was like, yeah, come to think of it, there is a big difference. But
Mhm.
that's the beautiful, easy evolution of it, is that it isn't in your face, it isn't screaming for attention, it just is. And I think to your point about feeling like enough and feeling worthy, nobody has to scream and put on a big fanfare for you to believe that you are enough and that you are worthy and whole and complete and beautiful just as you are. You should just, we're born knowing that, and somehow it gets programmed out of us. And we need to
Yeah.
come back to knowing that it doesn't require pom poms and a loudspeaker for us to know that it's worth it and we're worth it.
I agree. And I think there in mindset work, there are a lot of those kind of gimmicky approaches and really flashy approaches. And that's not really speaking to that quiet part of ourselves these feelings and thoughts come from. And so when you get quiet and you really lean in and listen to a really quiet voice, that voice will eventually get more confidence to be louder and be more prominent. And you don't need fireworks and pom poms and loudspeakers, and that's fun. That's fun sometimes. Don't get me wrong. I like
Yeah.
a good party and I like, I'm a loud person and flashy and whatever. I like all that. But when I'm talking about looking, like, at the deep parts of myself, especially as a woman, I think there's this, like, soft, quiet, feminine part of me that I have beaten out of myself,
Mhm.
over so many years of wanting to boss up and level up and make something of myself and make a name of myself and be a mom, but not too much of a mom, and be a
Mm.
career woman, but not too much, and, like, really finding this curious balance that I don't know if it really exists. I think it exists differently for everybody, and it's such an individual experience of figuring out what that means for you and how do you identify yourself in all of these roles that we play as women in our lives.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. That's exactly right. You have to know what you need in your life that matters to you. And so often when people will begin to work with me, that's where we begin. What are your values?
Mhm.
And often they think they know what they are, but when it comes time to articulating it, don't just tell me honesty, tell me how honesty applies to your life.
Yeah.
So it's a definition of, show me how this is defined in your life and how you're living
Yeah.
them. Those are your values. The other side of what I also ask them is, what do you value?
Mm.
Because so often we say family, and then when we look at our 100% of our time that is spent in the day, and then day after day, and then weeks, and then months, and how much time did your family get of you when
Mm.
you said you love them the most?
Mhm.
And so we've really got to look at ourselves, pay attention to our own needs, really understand ourselves so you can start making choices that are aligned with what is the version of you that you really want to be. Because she's there, you
Right.
just may not know her well enough yet. And isn't that interesting? You're not talking to a 13-year-old, you're talking to a full grown woman,
Mhm.
and she doesn't quite know who she is yet.
So you start to explore that with looking at values and how she might be spending her time. What else do you start to not prod, but prompt and start to look at other than that? Values, time, what else?
Her responsibilities, where does
Mhm.
she often place them? There's responsible for and there's responsible to. And
Mm.
often we get the two confused. And so you might be responsible for putting food on the table, but you're not responsible to making your child need to eat that broccoli.
Ooh, I
Maybe
like
there's some, you
this.
understand what I'm saying? So there is a difference between responsible for and responsible to. And so we often burn out as moms, especially thinking that we have to carry all the responsibilities for everyone.
Mhm.
And we don't. We have to provide opportunities for people to be responsible for themselves. So you
Mhm.
teach your child how to cross the street safely. When they're out there on their own, you can't be there. You've got to be able to release that. You've got to know that
Right.
you did enough to prepare them for that because they are now responsible for themselves,
Right.
right? Your
Right.
response became well before that. Now you've got to release it. You're responsible to yourself to make sure that you are setting a great example for your kids of how to take care of yourself, how
Right.
to put your needs first, how to make sure your plate is full and with all the things on it that it needs so that you are satisfied. Because otherwise, they see a mom who's a hypocrite who tells
Yeah.
them to do this, that, and the other, but and the child absorbs everything. So it's very confusing. This child is so confused now because mom says to do this and this, and I see her doing that and that. And
Mhm.
I don't understand which part of mom do I follow?
Right.
And then that erodes the trust.
Right.
How do I trust what she's coming at me with this when I see her doing that? And so
Mhm.
you've got to, self-trust is a big piece that we talk about as well, because we break our word to ourselves all the time. And if we had a friend who broke her word to us the same way, we would not be friends anymore. And
Mhm.
so there's a small part of you that is saying, hey, I don't really trust you to take care of me. You need
Right.
to go talk to Katie because she's going to tell you how to take care. Like you start looking for voices outside of yourself to tell you what is right for you, what you need. And we know that people's opinion are often fleeting. Today
Right.
they're in a good mood, they'll say something nice to you. Tomorrow in the crappy mood, they'll say something horrible to you. So if you're choosing to value yourself based on someone else's opinion of you, you're going to be on this trampoline of
And
emotions and you're going to get off nauseous.
And we can say that to our kids, right? I was thinking of the phrase, do as I say, not as I do. We can
Yeah,
say all these things to our kids. Don't value yourself, take care of yourself, do all these things. But if we're not doing it, it kind of goes back to what we were saying even in the beginning of this episode. If you're not doing this work for yourself, your kids are watching way more than you think. And from much of a younger age than I think most people really realize.
yeah,
And your kids emulate you and your child. If your child is struggling for whatever reason, it's a symptom of the system, right? It's a symptom of, and that doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you as a parent. I think people take this super duper personally because it is personal. I don't think they should not take it personally. Your family is the one of the most personal things. But I think instead of taking it from a defensive standpoint, let's get really curious and let's really look at what could, how could we enact positive change if we're struggling, if there's a challenge, instead of, I'm doing the best I can do. And it's get quiet. We're saying get quiet and get curious.
hmm
And I think a lot of people, a lot of parents don't do that. They get really stuck in this. I have to look, then it's all the external things. I have to look like a good parent. I have to check all the boxes. I'm
yeah,
responsible for and to all the things that my kids do.
that's right.
And I think once you let some of that go and you empower and you feel empowered and you're inherently empowering your kids, they're going to do more of these things. And that's the beauty of like when you engage in this mindset where the whole family system benefits from it.
Yeah, 100%. And curiosity is something that is big in my world. That all of a sudden, oh my gosh, there's this piece of drama happening over here. And it's okay, don't dive into the drama. That's like a pit. Instead,
Right.
just stay close by and get curious. What does this really mean?
Mhm.
There's going to be good and bad that can come out of it, but get curious and be open to it, and that will help you navigate it, as opposed to just lighting your own hair on fire and joining the drama. Like,
And I think too, when I talk to parents about validating their children, and a lot of people get misguided of they have to agree with their kids. They have to get on the merry-go-round or they have to like really jump into the experience that's going on in the family in order to really understand it. And that's not true. You don't have to agree with it. You don't have to enmesh yourself into it. You can just get really curious and ask questions and not necessarily have to take a defensive stance or a stance where you agree with whatever is going on with your child. And I think too that also takes so much pressure off of trying to be all of the things for your family all at once. It really does. And it's such a simple shift, really.
yeah. Yeah, 100%. Let's say your kid is having whatever drama at school.
Mhm.
Your mama bear comes out and says, oh, let me fix that for you. But if you stand just near the chaos, probably with a hand on their shoulder, and you get curious, you're going to say, how do you think you should move through this? What are you feeling about this? Because your feelings as a mom who's on the fence might be far greater and angrier or more upset than the child's.
Mhm.
And so start with those with curiosity. How does that make you feel? How are you feeling about it? What would you like to do? What would be a good outcome for you? What do you feel comfortable how do you want to feel comfortable moving through this? Let the child lead. And by that way, you're not taking responsibility for, you're responsible to them to support them, but they start digging into their own voice, into their own inner
Yes.
knowing, and they're
Yes.
letting you know this is what I'm available. This is how resourced I am. This is what I'm available to do. This is what feels right. And then from there you can now guide them,
Mhm.
right? Maybe
Mhm.
help them with the words. How do I articulate that in a way that it comes across with the meaning I have behind it? Because
Mhm.
communication is so important, right? And being able to articulate your meaning. Because sometimes my eldest son and my younger one, for that matter, they know in their heart what they want to say. It doesn't always come out the right way. But I understand what they want to say. If I didn't understand what they wanted to say, how could I possibly help them with their communication around it?
Mhm. And I think too, parents get so caught up because they don't have the tools in the toolbox to ask the right questions, or ask any questions. I
Yeah.
don't even say the right questions, to ask questions. And they also have kind of a misconception about when I talk to a lot of parents of what a child developmentally can handle. And some of these like really developmentally appropriate things that parents are like, oh my God, this is a crisis. I'm like, this is a really developmentally appropriate issue for your child to be going through. Like drama at school when you have teenagers. And what a perfect opportunity to practice these skills in a controlled environment with
Hmm.
school. You're at home with your kids, you're able to facilitate these conversations. What a beautiful opportunity to practice these skills that most adults cannot even do because they were never taught. When parents are like, oh, they're too young to handle that, they can't possibly figure this out without me doing it for them. No, they're never going to figure it out if you don't give them the tools to figure it out. And so that's what I talk to parents of teens a lot about too. But I think the part with raising teenagers is like we're saying, a lot of it is working on yourself. Your kids are a mirror of you.
Yeah. Yeah. The first time I heard that, I actually got really angry.
The truth will set you free, but first it will piss you off.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, yeah. I think is it Dr. Shafali? I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing her name correctly.
Yeah.
And she said that your children are a mirror of you. I'm like, are you kidding me right now? And then I sat with that and I marinated in that and I bathed myself in that and I went, oh
Yeah.
damn, she's right.
Yes. I think that's how my dad would, for at least my dad would be like, ah, shit. There is that initial reaction of, I hate that. I absolutely hate that. But that's even an invitation of like, why? Like, what is that there? And what do we see that we don't like about ourselves and our
Yeah.
kids? And how do our kids internalize that
Hmm.
too? And what does that and what that means about them and their sense of self? And I think it just is such a lovely opportunity to ask lots of really thought provoking questions and deepen your relationship with yourself and with your kids.
Yeah, 100%. You said earlier that when a child's having struggles, the parents might send them to therapy and send them to
Hmm.
whatever, or minimize it because they are not resourced enough to deal with it, and the
Hmm.
child suffers, right? But the truth is, I believe your point was that it's a symptom of what's going on in the family dynamic. And yeah, your child is mirroring to you. And if you don't like what, then you need to investigate. You need to get curious about what that means. And
Hmm.
where is it that you might have been dropping the ball or you haven't been present enough? And so if your family is your most important part of your life, and your child is struggling, it's time to pay attention to the child and where it's coming from and what's
Yes,
going on. Because that is your invitation. That child's struggle is your invitation to step up your parenting, to step into deeper, however it is, make the adjustment that you need to make because right now is when they're struggling and right now is when they need your support.
absolutely. And I think it's just so amazing how not only are our children our biggest mirrors, but they're our biggest teachers.
Oh,
And so many of these questions and e exercises of life that you go through as a parent like that, it just teaches you such profound lessons. It has the opportunity to. I shouldn't say it always does because a lot of people don't really learn the lesson that's right in front of their face. But if you are curious and observant and willing to lean in and understand something maybe that you didn't understand before, parenthood can be such a gift in that respect of being your greatest teacher in life and really elevate you to be the most authentic version of yourself. And that is what this show is all about. Is about being authentic and being who you really are. And mindset work is so powerful in that. But I think too, there's so much no not noise, but there's so much conversation right now about how hard it is to be a working mom and how difficult it is to attain a type of career that really supports being a very present, active parent. And can we really have it all? I think generations like millennials now are mostly parents for the most part. And a lot of new millennial parents are like my grandparents had this new mindset of women can do more than just be at home. And then our parents are like, I'm going to have it all. I'm going to be the working mom. I'm going to have the career and have the family. And then now people coming into millennials coming into parenthood now are like, this is really hard. No one told us how isolating and difficult and overwhelming this is. And I don't have the tools to ask to be the parent I want to be, the career woman I want to be, and so I don't feel like I'm excelling in any area and I feel just so lost. And what would you say to someone that is having some of those thoughts right now?
Yeah. My question is to them would be, what is the all? If you want to have it all,
Mm-hmm.
what is the all? And is that the all that someone else has defined that you
Mm-hmm.
think is trending,
Yep.
that you feel you need to live up to? Where are your values?
Mm-hmm.
Where are you not living them? And let's go look at that, how it is that you can lean more into that. What is it that you value? Because what is all?
Right.
Like, how have you defined that for yourself? When you sit down, if you're in a relationship with the father of your children or your spouse or whatever makeup it is for your family, do you guys understand what all is and how to get there? And often women are terrible at asking for what they want.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if all means that you need better support around childcare for you to do something for yourself that is important for you, then you need to discuss that, and childcare needs to be put into place, however that looks.
Mm-hmm.
And that whether that means that your spouse is stepping up or it's paid, but you need to figure out, you need to make that happen for yourself, but not asking for it, you'll never get it. And so when you look at all, look at what is the all really, and why does it matter?
Mm-hmm.
Does it matter because it really matters to you? This is something you're deeply passionate about and want to go for? Or is this something that everyone else is expecting of you?
Mm-hmm.
And the people who are really doing well, who are successfully running a business or really climbing up that ladder and have the children and have the marriage and seems to have all the things, they're not doing it alone. They have help. And so they have the help. They have asked for the help. They have defined the help. They understand what that means. They understand all of it. And so if you don't understand your situation and you haven't, and therefore you don't understand your needs and how you need to be supported, how can you even ask for it? So it
Right.
still comes back to the inner work, doesn't it? To
Yes,
understand.
always. Yes. And while it can be scary and it can be daunting and overwhelming to step into this work for the first time, the payoffs and the rewards are so worth the discomfort of just taking that next step. So, if people are interested in learning more about your work and what you do with your clients, where can they find you?
My company name is kaveastudio.com online, and I am on LinkedIn, I am on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, I'm even on Threads.
Yeah, there's so many platforms now. I'm just like, oh my God, how many social medias do I have to keep up with?
I
So
know.
overwhelming.
I know, but my favorite two are LinkedIn and Instagram. So I'm happily over there if you want to follow or connect with me. And if you want to have a conversation, definitely reach out. I've got a calendar link ready for you, and we can have 30 minutes of beautiful conversation.
Awesome. And I will link your social media in the show notes and where people can find you so they can learn more. So you do Convey a Studio. What is that? Is that just like where you house your work, or what's the difference between that and your coaching program?
So my business, Kaveya Studio, was the business that would launch businesses. And so people still come to me for help with launching their businesses. But it's incorporated, it's fully established, has all that it needs to run. And so I've pivoted the point of the business to be more around mindset work now. So
Awesome.
yes, I can still take your business from idea to launch, but that isn't the main point of what I get up and I'm excited to do anymore. It's more around the mindset work. And so Kaveya Studio is there. And it's interesting because the word Kaveya is an old word for sort of the stadium seating
Okay.
and looking at a stage. And
Yes.
so the idea was that we would connect you with your audience. And so for me, it still holds true because in the mindset work, I'm connecting you back to yourself. There
Mm,
you are on stage performing, but who do you really want to be when you step on stage? And so
mm.
I still think it's relevant. And so I've kept the name and I love it.
I love
And yeah, so I'd love for people. And studio is a place where things happen. It's work. It's where
Right.
work happens. It's not
Right.
just you're not just a voyeur. Like you actually have to get in and get dirty.
Yeah,
And
get your
so,
hands dirty. Yeah.
even that for me still holds a lot of value in the work that I do now.
Yeah, it completely does. Yeah, it totally embodies what you do. And like you said, even when you were focused on the business entrepreneurial side of it, it was mindset. It really was taking your clients from thinking of themselves as an aspiring business owner to a business owner. And it
That's
really
right.
is those mindset shifts that get you there. So I'm going to link everything in the show notes for my listeners to be able to find you and learn more about your messages with mindset and the work that you do. This was a really powerful conversation. And thank you so much for being here today.
I loved every second of it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, everybody. This has been another awesome week and another awesome guest. And I will be back next Monday with another lovely lady and her story. Have a great week, everybody. That's all for this episode of The B Word. Don't forget to check out the show notes for any resources we shared with you today, as well as finding our links to our Instagram, Facebook, YouTube channel, and our website, bucommunity.com. You can find out all of our course offerings, memberships, opportunities to work with me individually, and more. That's all for now. See you next time.